Hi, and welcome to Unit 3. Today, what we are going to look at is the history of posters, something that is so fundamental to all of the visual culture that we know today. Why is this important? Because posters are one of the most prominent forms of visual communications used in the 20th century, and posters have eventually become the inspiration for major forms of social media and other visual communication that we use both physically and digitally. Let's try and understand where posters came from. Since they are the most prominent portion of almost all the advertising you see today, you will notice that almost all kinds of communication, be it film, stories, or any other political propaganda or many other subjects, often have a poster that visually communicate the mere concept. They are integral to the promotion and production of any possible content. But how did they come about? Let's take a look from the dawn of time. Well, it's very easy to say. Most cave paintings have begun in ages and ages ago when people started using these walls as media to actually communicate their thoughts to their compatriots. However, when it comes to actually content, you can see areas such as Pompeii, historical Pompeii, just before the eruption of the Vesuvius, where you can see walls being littered with text and graffiti that have been used as a means for communication. However, the history of posters has always been closely associated with the development of printing techniques. Naturally, in the 14th century, with the invention of the Gutenberg printing press, the world's first paper poster was done by William Caxton. In the 14th century, he had brought the Gutenberg press over to Britain, and he had used that press to create a sort of slip that would communicate the events that he wanted to speak about. However, the first printed poster that included a visual was done by Jean Dupré in 1492 in France. Here you will notice that he has used a supporting visual to talk about the content and the topic. However, the content itself is mainly verbose and in bulk text. But all of this printing was not just restricted to the Western world. Even in China, printed matter was often distributed as content and printed books, sometimes even posters. They had come up with a manner of movable type, the pioneer of which was Bi Sheng. You can see one such example in the Dharani Sutra, a historical document that was printed in Chinese. This was a Buddhist document, but you can also see the historical imagery that has accompanied it. However, it is with the use of lithographic printing, which is basically printing using a stone and then embossing that stone with your visual, covering it with ink, and then pasting a paper on it to get the transverse of the image is what actually created a landmark. Once the use of lithographic printing began, we see posters that have more and more illustrations added onto them. For example, let's take a look at this poster that was created in the late 18th century. The era itself is called La Belle Époque, or the Beautiful Age in France. From the 18th and 19th centuries all the way till your World War I, the era saw a major explosion in the use of visual art when it came to communicating. Most of these posters were for the dance and theatre performances that were done in that era. Considering it was such a colorful era with regards to the promotion of social arts, you can also see how typography has been used in such a different way. The major titles were all used and written very, very creatively, and comparatively minor information was made smaller. So you can see that the use of 2-3 colors has made these lithographic posters much more attractive. As you go forward, multicolor posters started becoming popular. For example, you see these performance posters designed by Toulouse-Lautrec in France. All of them had some or the other kind of performance involved, and they could use at least 3 to 4 colors at any given point of time with a specifically designed graphic. But this was not just again in the Western world. In India, we see the rise of calendar art. Why is this significant? Because Raja Ravi Verma, the man who pioneered oil painting in India, also started bringing the printing press to India. With that, he realized that gods and goddesses could be replicated through printing and distributed to the masses. They started acting as posters, and this also caused a revolution that even the common man could afford to have an image of God in his house. So you would see people eagerly collecting and buying these printed calendars, cutting out the image of God and pasting it in their house as a poster that they could worship to. On the other hand, in Japan, ukiyo-e wood prints became popular in the 17th, 18th and 19th centuries. Hokusai was one such popular person. Once again, you can see how the use of monocolors were there in these pictures. At any given point of time, the color scheme of these posters would be a very limited specific palette. For example, the reds, the greys, the green, yellow and the blue. Very specific colors that don't blend too much, but the lines and all have been very detailedly created. All of these were a form of wood block prints. However, as we grow further out of the 19th century, you see that art, print and typography are being experimented with greater and greater. For example, this poster by Alexander Steinlein. Here, now what they've done is, they have started experimenting with typography, but at the same time they've tried to add a certain graphic character by creating and hinting at the main characters of the certain performance or whatever event they are advertising. Conceptual posters started becoming more popular. In terms of style, in the Art Deco era, basically a lot of flowing natural forms were used. So as you notice, most of your posters at that time had also become very, very elaborate. You could see elegant elements and illustrations that were very, very detailed in all of their content. However, when it comes to the father of modern advertising, we attribute it to Leonardo Cappiello. He was the person who basically started making his posters very minimal and conceptual. What he would do is highlight certain central concepts while keeping his entire composition very eye-catching and with bold colors. He was somebody who actually started innovating in terms of poster design. He tried to take concepts and convey them instead of just using images directly. By this time, we enter the period of World War II. In World War II, a lot of these posters were used for propaganda and nationalism. As usual, they would encourage either the workforce to join women for joining the workforce or men to join the army. And you can see the different graphic styles that have been developed in this era. Some of them partially photographic as well as using bold compositions. And they also started using very catchy phrases that would encourage people to join them. All of these would often have very strong graphic qualities. Some of them started even branding the colors. For example, the red and the blue and the white were very typical of American and British Allied army favor. But it is not just in the Western world that we see propaganda posters being done. Let's take a look at the Indian subcontinent. Propaganda and nationalism was a major selling point in India as well. For example, Britain at this point of time was heavily dependent on India for all of its resources. During World War II, they would often try and use posters that encouraged Indians to work for British interests. So that's why you would see a lot of posters encouraging Indians to sign up for the British Army or to produce resources for the well-being of the British Raj. These were very common in terms of propaganda. But they were not the only people to use this. In fact, people who were fighting for Indian independence, our revolutionaries, extremists, as well as members of the Congress Party, started creating nationalist imagery in terms of posters to encourage all Indians to unite. The Bharat Mata was one such symbol who they used very popularly in their publications. Their posters would be used with very specific symbolism, such as the use of a Mata, the use of all of these natural elements signifying the unity of India from north to south, as well as using certain religious symbolism that they felt would appeal to the masses. All of these would be used in collaboration with the image of the mother, to talk about the motherland as somebody that all Indians should unite and fight for. You can also see the symbol of the Trishul and the tricolor, talking about the boldness of the mother. While this was done for Indian independence by Indians, on the other hand, you also see Japanese posters urging Indians to fight. Japan and Britain were on opposite sides of World War II, and Japanese felt that Indians who struggled against the British at this point of time could be taken as allies. At this point, even Subhas Chandra Bose tried to work with the Japanese to fight against the British. So you can see posters like this popularly sent across Southeast Asia and Bengal to actually urge Indians to favor Japan and drive out Britons. Take a look at this poster as well. It is multilingual and at the same time trying to communicate many concepts in just one picture. Now, one thing that you will notice is most of these posters that have been used are highly illustrative. They tried to create an entire painting and then used some amount of text to actually talk about their main content. However, around World War II, there was the Bauhaus movement of minimalism that had started in Germany and extended to the USA. The Bauhaus movement basically believed in simplicity, minimalism, conceptualization, the use of bold and geometric colors and forms, and simplification of text. All of these meant that a certain amount of conceptual treatment would be given to these posters as well. If you see this poster, they would use even the most simplest and basic forms to try and create something interesting when it comes to communicating. You see a hierarchy, and the content itself is arranged in a creative way to catch people's interest. The posters themselves were very minimal. No unnecessary information was included. But when you see the work of Cassandra, the same aesthetic of something very minimal with very few colors was taken forward into very bold visuals. Here, these visuals were very boldly composed to try and catch people's eye from a long distance. They would try and look at these posters and try and understand what it is that it's trying to say. But now, when you look at these Russian posters, you see how, in terms of modernism, a certain amount of boldness is seen. With clear forms, very specific color schemes, and the mixture of photograph, typography, text, as well as imagery. Now this composition or this kind of composition started making use of more than just one symbolism. Modern posters started mixing photography as well as imagery to try and communicate to their audience. You can also see how this has impacted a certain cutout silhouette type of graphic, where the aesthetic has often been minimal but at the same time impactful. But now, with the passage of time, people started mixing photographs and text in a much more compelling way. This is the era of photo manipulation, where what they would do is they would take a picture and they would try and play with it as much as possible, such as these posters by Müller-Brockmann. You can also see how typography has been played with. For example, in this beautiful photograph of a ballet dancer, the play itself, Giselle, is basically given a lot of prominence, whereas the text, which actually gives the information of the performance, is much smaller. Now the entire composition is very, very eye-catching. This design by Armin Hoffman can be considered very successful. But at the same time, a lot of poster design was also influenced by the era in which they were living in. For example, the 60s and the 70s was the era of hippie culture, where people in the US were trying to protest against World War II and not World War II, but the Vietnam War and the US's constant efforts in wars all the time. At this point, the use of psychedelic substances and drugs became very, very common. So as a result of that also impacted the culture that was influencing visual art, such as these posters that popularized the work by Bob Dylan still used that kind of hippie culture as their visual inspiration to play with some very crazy illustration ideas. But over time, designers started taking these graphics and taking it even further. For example, these posters were conceptual. In terms of an entire communication, they tried to push the limits of what can and cannot be done. This work by Paul Rand is very, very iconic. For example, this poster he created for IBM Corporation made it very interesting to people to actually appeal to them. Now, while all of these posters were physical, what actually started making a difference was the digital poster in today's day and age. People realized that posters don't necessarily have to be static. When you have large surfaces such as malls and billboards on which they can be splashed, posters could also be moving, they could also be merged with advertisements, and a lot more could be done. One example is Times Square in New York, but if you go around most major cities, you will find digital posters taking up most of a city's landscape. This is not just restricted to the physical space. Today, poster designs influence a lot of the content that we see on social media and on websites. Posters are the influence for social media marketing that you see today. They try to convey as much information as possible visually, and they try to promote whatever message has to be given with as much graphic intent as a poster can. Digital posters have basically extended to your social media marketing and digital marketing, and they can only get more and more complex as the world goes further.